The Cowboys and Broncos, new lead running back for 2025, will have a massive opportunity to be a fantasy champion. We discuss the best landing spot for free agent and rookie running backs in today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with the NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, but I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today, we are going to go through the running back vacancies for the 2025 season. Now, maybe their lead back from last year is expected to sign elsewhere in free agency. Maybe they just need a new running back, right? So we're going to discuss all of these openings that are out there for this offseason, whether they're going to fill it through free agency or the draft. We'll discuss what are the best opportunities for next year in fantasy and who we'd like to see in those roles. The number one opening spot for the running back position has to be the Dallas Cowboys. It was last year as well, right? But they decided not to fill it with anybody, and it did not work out for them. So I do think this year they will not make that mistake again twice. They have to fix their running game. And I mean, this is just going to be a prime opportunity for a running back to come in and a pretty good offense and get, 300 carries right away?
Yeah, I mean, Rico Dowdle did the best he could, and he's a free agent now. They brought back Ezekiel Elliott. That was a disaster. They actually cut him before the end of the season, so his career is pretty much done, I would think, now. And then you look at Dowdle. Look, he did what he needed to do in certain games. He was a fantasy asset at times, but no one really reliable. So, Michelle, I've done a few mock drafts here, and it's strange. Like, I usually don't say the 12th overall pick is someone that is the same, and I've locked him in. Like I think every other draft pick has changed constantly. But number 12, I have Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State going to the Cowboys, and it's a little history repeating itself. Back in 2016, you had Ezekiel Elliott go, but he went 4th overall. So the Cowboys, I think, need to draft Jeanty badly, right? It's Brian Schottenheimer calling the plays here again. So no McCarthy. McCarthy actually did call the plays last year, but Schottenheimer gets another chance here. He was in Seattle, the Jets, all these other teams that were pretty run heavy. What they typically do with the Schottenheimer offense, tied a little bit North Turner, power run, set up the deep passing game, right? It's a little bit old school in that approach. There's some of that they need, right? So for Dak Prescott to come back, for CeeDee Lamb to get a better deep threat, they got to power run the ball. So Ashton Jeanty is great for that. He's a 3-down back. You can put him out there all the time. He's going to give them some explosive runs, which they didn't have. He's going to finish well in the red zone for them. So really, Michelle, Jeanty could end up on any team and do really well. If he's going to get a feature role on the Cowboys, I think it would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's Deuce Vaughn, and that's the only running back on the Cowboys roster that's not a free agent. So this is a desperate hole. And like with Schottenheimer being his first year as head coach, 2 years ago under him as OC, McCarthy was calling his plays a lot of the time. But the Cowboys ran the ball 370 times with a running back in 2023, 13th most in the NFL. So it's not, we've already seen them be above average there. And that was with only Tony Pollard. Like, they need a guy that can handle the big workload, and we know Jeanty can, right? In 14 games with Boise State this past year, he had 374 carries. That's insane. 397 touches. So we know his body can hold up in a big season like that. And that would, I mean, everyone's pretty much matching those two together, which it would be kind of crazy if it ends up happening, but that would be exciting, and they need him. Now, the second best opening, I was going back and forth. You had the Broncos as the second best opening. I was going back and forth between them, the Steelers, the Raiders, and by the end of it, I decided I agree with you. I think the second best opening for the running back position this offseason is the Broncos. They just didn't have, they wanted to utilize their running backs this year, right? And they kept trying with different backs, and it just wasn't working out for them. Javonte Williams just isn't that dude they expected him to be. Joel McLaughlin's not going to do anything. I think Audric Estime could be decent, but he's not like star quality. And then right now, I mean, they're going into this offseason with McLaughlin, Estime, and Tyler Batty. Those are the guys on their roster. So they desperately need someone over the 2 seasons with Sean Payton as the head coach, they have targeted the running back position 270 times over the last 2 seasons. That's the most in the NFL. So I do think they need to find a guy that's both a good runner, because they need to get better at that, obviously, but also a good receiver. And obviously, if they can find that, that would be fantastic for fantasy if they're used both as a runner and heavy in receptions.
Yeah, I think they need to go the rookie route here. Look, I mean, Audric Estime was a worthy shot, but he just didn't fit in here. When you end at Tyler Bidet or Batty, however you say his name, he's not going to be back as a key member of this team going forward. So when you look at that, I mean, Javonte Williams is a free agent as well. So they can blow up this entire backfield. They could also get a workhorse. Now, I thought about Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. He's pretty good. He's coming up strong as a potential back-end first-round pick. And that's where Denver's picking. Obviously, as a playoff team, I think that's a little too high for him. Plus, I don't know if it will be in the back of their mind. I know there's different decision makers, but Javonte Williams also came from North Carolina.
I know.
And it's not worked out. So one running back I really like is Quinshon Judkins of Ohio State. I actually like both of them, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. I think both these guys can be pretty solid. I mean, Ohio State running backs in the right system tend to come through. And I think he would be a good fit here because he would restore some of that combination of power running, but also have some juice to take it the distance. I think with the Broncos, they were just a bit predictable, right? I mean, when Estime was in the game, it was more power. McLaughlin was in the game, change of pace. When Javonte Williams was in the game, he was just ineffective doing either, right? So they kind of got really predictable. Javonte Williams, I think, had one good game that he blew up against the Saints, but that was it, right? The season. He just never was a good fit in the Sean Payton offense. He's had injuries, I think, that have also slowed him down and the once great potential he had out of this backfield. So, again, they need to get somebody with that same type of potential, someone solid. Playoff Bo Nix. His passing game is going to be better. They're going to add some people to help Cortland Sutton here as well. Broncos, I think, need to go different offensive route, maybe wide receiver, tight end in the first round. But beyond that, I think that's where they'll get their running backs later, second, third round. That's where they could target Judkins or even Henderson would fit.
Yeah, I do definitely think they're going to add a running back here in the first 3 rounds, which will be huge because they're instantly going to get a great opportunity to compete right away. And depending on how early they go, right, we'll feel better about them taking over quickly. I mean, even Genty could be an option for them, though. Like, let's say they make it past the Cowboys. The Cowboys don't take him. He starts to fall. Maybe the Broncos go that route where Sean Payton's like, I want my next Alvin Kamara. I want my guy I can lean on. And maybe they go that route. And obviously that would be amazing too. Wherever Genty goes, we're most likely going to be excited unless he's going to end up like splitting. You know, we could see the Falcons ruining our lives and for some reason landing him and Bijan together and just ruining our fantasy hopes. But overall, if he lands in a spot with an opportunity, it's going to be great for him. There are 4 more openings that we think could have big fantasy potential for next year. We'll get to that right after a quick break.
All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by PrizePicks. Football season may be over, but basketball is in full swing. There's no better way to stay in the game than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. If you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your cash. Really, just look at all the good stuff that's coming up here. You had Luka Doncic, who we saw his debut. The Lakers looked really good. So now you can get on the action with him. He's playing again, so you can look at his points, his rebounds, his assists, all that good stuff. So check that out. That's an exciting player to play with always, but now even more so with the Lakers. All you have to do to get in on PrizePicks is download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, get into the NBA right now at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Michelle, it is time to reveal the next couple teams that need a running back. We kind of hinted them earlier, but you go and reveal team number 3 because it's close to your heart.
Yeah, it's going to be the Steelers. And you might say, well, how can this be a good opening? Because we've seen Najee Harris get all this work and it hasn't worked out for him. I think I don't really understand because when you're watching Najee, he doesn't look that bad. And then at the end of the day, his stats look terrible, right? But when you look deeper, the Steelers had the 9th overall run blocking grade as a team, according to PFF this year. They gave their running backs the 5th most carries in the league at 426. They had the 9th most targets to running backs this season at 109. One of 6 teams that give running backs 400 plus carries this year, with the Packers, Lions, Falcons, Eagles, and Buccaneers. Those 5 other teams all had a great fantasy running back, and the Steelers did not. So I do think that maybe this is just a Najee Harris problem. And they should, whoever steps into this role will have to compete with Jaylen Warren. I think that's the biggest worry, right? And that's why they're not number 2. That's why I put the Broncos, because I think Jaylen Warren's the best running back among this group of competition if they do end up keeping him as a restricted free agent. But if they can get in someone super talented, I do think they could shine in this offense with Arthur Smith.
Yeah, and Arthur Smith does say that he likes a running back, and he's with Bijan Robinson. We talked about him briefly, but Omarion Hampton would be a good choice out of North Carolina for their running style, because he's a guy that they would also be able to keep on the field for 3 downs. I think this problem was Najee Harris was kind of the big power guy. Jaylen Warren was the outside guy. They could interchange and do things right, but it was clear that they had strengths in one area or the other, and they need a back that is just strong overall, so you can keep him on the field for the 3 downs. You're not telegraphing your plays. It's easier to break those long runs. Again, that's something underrated. You have to be efficient, but you also have to have that Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry ability to see a hole and burst through and just take over, right? And if you see something, just get to the end zone, because sometimes you can struggle in the red zone and you need a back who can help you score outside of the red zone a few times, right? So I think Hampton could do that really well in their offense. And look, you're right. I think it could be Najee a problem because they've invested a bit in their offensive line. I need to see a little bit more investment in that offensive line. I think they're going to do that. But I think any other back, I think they're just going to move on from Harris, and I think he'll be a lot more effective.
One guy I actually would really like to see, because I don't want the Steelers to use a 1st-round pick on a running back again.
No, they won't.
And I don't think they will. But Cam Skattebo from Arizona State.
Oh, wow.
He reminds me a lot of James Conner. And I think that's just, I'm missing the days of James Conner. I miss that just like gritty performance where he was so good at getting those extra yards. And I think Cam Skattebo is that type of player. Yeah. And he's a good receiving back too, like a really sneaky good receiving back, kind of like James Conner was. So he just reminds me of James Conner so much. I think that's why I want him.
And he would be a Steelers fan favorite immediately. Let's not be joking here. Like he would be a very popular Steeler and maybe one of the top jerseys sold. So yeah, that's fun. He's a player that I didn't know what to do with, Michelle, because he's kind of a jack of all trades, but he's starting to rise up boards here. So I would be interested to see him for sure, what he could do with an Arthur Smith offense, because he has a bit of Tyler Algier in him in that style. So when you combine those styles of Robinson and Algier, then it's something that comes in the comfort zone of Arthur Smith. Now, the Raiders,
I like this Raiders opening. I do.
It's a good opening, but I don't understand why they moved on from Josh Jacobs. I think he wanted to move on probably more so, but it was terrible last year. I mean, we thought Zamir White was going to be a thing. Remember that? I can't even remember that anymore, right? I mean, then you had Amir Abdullah and Alexander Madison pop up. This is wrong. I think 2 names that I don't know. Like, I'm excited for the potential of the Raiders because of now Chip Kelly in there and potential better running game, better cleanup overall with Pete Carroll. So there is something to look here, but I think they need a back who's really good at the passing game. That's why I thought Aaron Jones might be a good fit, especially do they all have another Packers reunion, and you have Devontae Adams back to Las Vegas with Aaron Rodgers. Does this all happen? I don't know, but Aaron Jones to me is just a solid type of back that could help clean up their backfield.
Yeah, it's interesting because you don't know. They have a lot of holes, right, that they're going to have to utilize these draft picks. And they need to find a quarterback. But with Pete Carroll there, I do think this is a really good landing spot because Amir Abdullah and Alexander Madison, they're free agents, right? So you're left with Sincere McCormick, Zamir White, Dylan Loeb. Like, they need to, they're going to find a starting running back for Pete Carroll who loves to run the ball, right? From 2010 to 2023, when he was a Seahawks head coach, the Seahawks ran the ball 28 times per game on average, right near the top of the league during that span under Carroll. So Carroll's going to want to run the ball. They're going to likely have a rookie quarterback, right? So you're going to have to lean on the run a little bit more. I don't know if Aaron Jones is the right answer.
Yeah.
Maybe if Nick Chubb can pass is better after the year removed.
Thought about him.
The
Yeah.
injury. Nick Chubb could be a very interesting one here too, because they could lean on him as a veteran in the backfield, right? While they have the young.
He's a good leader too, so that helps. Yeah. So I mean, he's a good locker room leader, and plus, we know what Pete Carroll's history is. He likes that Marshawn Lynch thumper. So maybe Aaron Jones is more kind of, maybe I'm looking at more from the perspective getting a veteran leader, right? But it's someone of that type, I think will be better for them than like taking a shot on Javonte Williams or something that's not going to really upgrade their backfield. So I'm excited to see what they can do. But yeah, the Raiders are rife with new possibilities now all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think I can see Nick Chubb there, kind of like that. All right, we have 2 more openings that we want to discuss. One could be great, but will J.K. Dobbins be back? We will discuss right after another quick break. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets in a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I think if we knew for sure this was going to be a vacancy, that this would be higher up on our list. And it's the Chargers, right? J.K. Dobbins is an unrestricted free agent, so they're going to have to re-sign him, give him definitely more than what they're giving him last offseason, right? Because other teams will be bidding now that he had a very good year. But will they bring back J.K. Dobbins? Do they want more? Because one thing I noticed was that the Chargers running backs saw 55 targets all season long. 55 combined targets to Chargers running backs. That's tied for the fewest in the league with the Rams. The Colts had the third fewest at 65, so 10 more than the Chargers and the Rams. Do they need a better pass-catching running back than J.K. Dobbins? Was that the issue? Or do they just not want a pass-catching running back? Maybe they don't really care for that in their scheme. But that's my question here. Do they want an upgrade to J.K. Dobbins because of how run-heavy they can be? And maybe they want some more versatility than what they can get from Dobbins.
Yeah, I think Dobbins is an okay pass catcher. We know Gus Edwards, the other former Raven on this team, doesn't really offer anything in that capacity, and you're just limited there, right? You're not going to use that, but maybe their alternative is getting a young tight end in there that is a little bit more of a factor than Will Dissly or Hayden Hurst were last year, and Dissly was hurt again. So, again, maybe they want to get another receiver in there where they want to just run, pound, throw downfield, and do that here with Greg Roman. Now, typically, I think they're going to get more out of Justin Herbert as a runner as well. So that could take away the need for checkdowns, right, for Greg Roman. So I don't know if they're that concerned. Again, Dobbins is not a zero as a receiver. He can do enough if they're only going to limit the targets there. The question is, Dobbins still got hurt again, right? He came back strong from the ACLs and all that. He was in the comeback player of the year conversation till the end. So if they trust him to stay healthy, I think he's a good option for them because clearly he fits well in their scheme going back to what Greg Roman was running in Baltimore. There is a connection there. So I think they'll do what they can to re-sign Dobbins, but you're right, it'll cost them a little bit more.
Yeah, and I won't be surprised, actually, if they want to upgrade because how much we know Harbaugh loves to run this ball, play defense. I do think they want someone a little bit more steady when it comes. I mean, J.K. Dobbins still had to miss some time, right? And can he stay healthy for 2 seasons, relatively healthy to what he normally does in his career? I won't be surprised if they want to upgrade. And if they do, I do think this is a fantastic landing spot, as long as that it's not just a scheme that doesn't target the running back position, because that's really limited J.K. Dobbins' potential, right? Like it was very touchdown heavy because if you're not getting targets, then you're going to be very reliant on touchdowns, which J.K. Dobbins was getting a lot of to start the year. So either way, it's a pretty good landing spot. Like if J.K. Dobbins is back there, cool. Like that's pretty much the best spot he can land in. But I would like to see them upgrade. Now, lastly here, It's the Cleveland Browns, and I think they're only on this list because we expect them to bring in someone that can be the lead back, right? Because I don't think they have a lead back on their team right now. Nick Chubb is a free agent. I don't know if they re-sign him. It doesn't seem like they will. Jerome Ford just really isn't that guy. It's Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong Jr. I don't think you can go into the season being like, those are our two running backs. Now, my worries with them is we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. They had the third worst run blocking grade as a team, according to PFF this last year. So they have a lot of things they need to fix before this running game is going to be good. But there is an opportunity for a guy to come in and get 200, 250 touches in this backfield.
Yeah, when you look at Jerome Ford, I mean, we tried to make the best out of him last year in fantasy, and we probably squeezed everything we can. It's probably over in terms of wanting to trust him. Now, the Browns, they're always going to be tied to Ohio State players. That's just the way it is, right? So you have Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. I think one of these guys could also be good for Jim Harbaugh because he likes Dobbins. He's seen the opposition at Ohio State, so he knows how strong of running players they have there that have a little bit of juice in the passing game. Now, I think Judkins is a little bit better in that area than Henderson. But if the Browns are going to say, look, we want to go back to what we had with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt when our offense was okay, then they'll find some combination where they get a power guy, right? I think Henderson might be a little bit better for that. And then get a combination. Maybe you go after one of the receiving type backs in free agency to kind of hedge your bets. You know, Antonio Gibson is out there. So maybe you do some kind of combo in your backfield for situational there for this particular backfield because it seemed to work the best, right? Kevin Stefanski blew it up. He didn't like the Ken Dorsey pass happier type scheme. So he said, I'm going to go back. Maybe he'll take more control of the offense. That means you're probably going to have that Chubb Hunt type combination. They could go back and go get Kareem Hunt, right? He's a free agent. So all these things that you look at, I think it's going to be a change to the Browns, but also a reversion. Again, Stefanski's job is on the line. He's going to go back to what worked well in this offense to take pressure off that uncertain quarterback situation.
Now, one guy, like, we didn't bring up a good landing spot for Najee Harris anywhere, and he has to be the best free agent running back, right? Like, on this list, maybe it's J.K. Dobbins, but with the injury worries, I think you'd put Najee Harris as the best one. But we didn't even have him as an option anywhere here. Is there a landing spot for Najee Harris that you would like? And now, could that be the Chargers, right? Would that be an upgrade to J.K. Dobbins? Could it be Washington? Like, what would be a landing spot for Najee Harris that would actually be an upgrade for him?
Yeah, I think any of these spots are okay. I think the bottom line is you can't just go in with Najee as your lead totally. Like, you think he's your power back. So maybe you'll want to stick it to the Steelers or try to if he goes to Cleveland and be their power back. And because that would be an upgrade for them over an injured Nick Chubb for sure, right? I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, you could look out to the Raiders, right? They could also say, look, Najee is a big dude like Marshawn Lynch, and remind Pete Carroll of that, and maybe they look at the pure straight-up talent there. So there's talent with Najee Harris. It's just getting him going. The Raiders actually are decent in blocking for the running game, surprisingly. So I think there are a lot of options for him. I just don't think I will count on Najee Harris to be a 20-touch back, right? I think he's going to be more like a 12 to 15-touch back. Maybe his role will expand depending on who else is on that running back roster or depth chart that he goes to. But I think he's going to be a valuable pickup. It's just hard to see because I could see him on all these teams in some kind of role other than the Steelers, including a sneaky one that you mentioned with the Washington Commanders.
I actually really like that Pete Carroll idea because, I mean, Marshawn Lynch looked like a huge bust with the Bills, right? He looked like a huge first-round bust with the Bills. And then Pete Carroll gets him over to Seattle, and all of a sudden he's almost like a Hall of Fame running back, right? So, I kind of like that idea. There's some landing spots for him. It'll be really interesting because it's going to be hard to trust Najee in fantasy ever when he's already been in a place where he got so many touches and still struggled. So that's why he wasn't named here. But that is it for today's episode and our top 6 running back fantasy vacancies. We'll be back tomorrow talking about the top 6 wide receiver fantasy vacancies for the 2025 season. I hope you all have a great night. Hit that subscribe button on wherever you're listening to us or watching us. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.